Rogers TV.
Welcome to Daytime Ottawa. It's Friday. Okay, I know it's not Friday, but it feels like Friday for all of us here at Rogers TV. I'm sure many of you at home, if not most of you as well, because it is Good Friday tomorrow. We're getting you set for Easter all week long, and this is a great way to sort of wrap up talking about Easter, because if you're looking for a delicious Easter dinner and you don't have your protein yet, well, there's no better place to go than my next guest. He's known as the Silver Fox Butcher. He's also the owner of Dumichel Meat and Deli. Ian Slipikoff back on the show. How are you?
Thanks for having me. I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm grateful that you're here, because this is probably one of the busiest days of the year for you guys, right?
Easter weekend's a pretty crazy weekend. You know, we've got a lot of orders for hams, turkeys, a lot of lamb this year.
Okay,
you know, and it's been a busy day.
Excellent.
I love having busy days. It just flows. You know,
yeah, absolutely.
Faster.
Well, and you got a great team there too, right? Most of your staff have been there for forever. Today, you want to talk about a couple of different things. You know, as I mentioned, Easter. Let's start off with brunch, right?
Yes.
Because everybody seems to do a brunch and a dinner over Easter weekend, right?
It's incredible. So for brunch, we've got everything you're going to need. We've got local eggs that come from La Ferme Avicole La Violette. So that's up in St. Isidore. So we've got the local eggs. We've got amazing smoked bacon.
No kidding.
We've got great pork and beef breakfast sausages. Comes from Quebec. We've got beans from La Beanerie from Plantagenet. We've got creton. We've got jams. We've got cheeses. We've got everything you want to have to put on your brunch plate.
You're ready to roll.
Yeah.
What makes your bacon so good? Like I you know, Monica and I have been going for years, and you know, we order this like pounds at a time. It's just so much different than the grocery store, and I think maybe it's that lack of sugars and things like that.
It's a lack of sugar. It's less processed. It's actually real pork that, you know, is smoked and properly cared for. It's Quebec pork, so you know, some of the best pork in the world. And it's a natural process. It's not a super processed bacon where, you know, they've got all the nitrates and the additives and everything added in. It's just a real good process of making bacon.
Couldn't agree more.
So.
Yeah, and breakfast sausages, like some of the best in the world. And if you're not familiar with the Beanery, by the way, it's become super famous for this small little shack, right?
I mean, it was incredible for what they've started out as and where they are now. Like all the different products they offer, because they've got, you know, the fèvolard, which are, you know, the pork beans. They've got a breakfast bean, which is sweeter. They've got vegetarian beans now. They've got a chili spaghetti sauce. Then they make all sorts of prepared meals. So, you know, if you're bacheloring it for a night, you need something to eat, and you don't feel like cooking, you know, there's frozen different size meals. So you've got spaghetti, you've got beef bourguignon, they've got stir fries, they've got lasagnas, shepherd pies.
Wow.
So there's lots of different options.
Yeah,
and then they make, you know, tortillas.
Yeah, their tortillas are
They've got
so good.
quiches as well.
Yeah.
So full lineup. They've been really great, and our customers love them.
Nice. Last time I paid you a visit, you said, Derek, you've got to leave with one of these, and we're going to get to steak in just a minute. But this is your own spice blend that you came up with, and it's very unique. Tell everybody at home about it.
So it's going to be available for sale soon. It's called the Silver Fox Butcher Steak Spice. It's my own blend. So I've tried a whole bunch of them out. This is the one that I kind of fell in love with. It's a great mix of salt, pepper, garlic, and a few other hidden spices in there.
Okay.
It's more fine than just, you know, your Montreal steak spice. It's super clunky and crusty that goes on a steak, and you know, you're kind of getting it stuck on your grill, and it just doesn't, it always comes off. It's just not a great product.
That's true, actually. That's a good point, right? Some of those steak spices, because they're big chunks, they don't stay on the steak well. Where I, you know, when I tested this out, it stays on nice.
So
it's
you
nice
get
and
to
fine.
keep that flavor.
Right.
And the flavor kind of soaks in. And it's my own brand. It's going to be available soon. We have a few bottles in the store.
Okay.
And we're going to be able to have it online. We're going to build a site, and
nice, good for you.
We'll have that. We're going to have a little bit of Silver Fox Butcher merchandise. So we're going to get some hats and shirts and stickers and stamps and lots of fun stuff made.
I can't. You've done such a great job branding.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations on that. And I know you've had some help too, but hats off to you. Well, barbecue season just around the corner, right? Speaking of steak spice, you brought some cuts of meat here. Tell us what you've got here with you today.
I've got some New York steaks, or strip loin, and some ribeye steaks. So that's just a rib steak without the bone.
Okay.
So I got beautiful AAA Canadian beef. You know, that's what we carry in the store. Everything, all the beef we sell is Canadian. There's nothing that's not Canadian. A lot of it comes from Ontario as well, from a family farm.
Okay.
You know, we want to make sure that you have the best quality. It's grass-fed, it's hormone-free, and it's well looked after. So the difference between a ribeye and a New York or a strip loin. So there's a whole loin. The ribeye part is one end, and the strip loin comes to the other end.
Okay.
So on the other side of the strip loin is the tenderloin on the bone.
Right.
So when you're looking at a T-bone steak, half of it is the New York, the other half is the tenderloin.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a beautiful steak. It's great to grill. You can do it in a cast iron pan. It's not as fatty as a rib would be.
Okay.
So it's not going to be as juicy, not quite as flavorful. It's going to have a little bit more chew to it, but it's an extremely tender steak.
Okay.
But when you get to a ribeye steak, which is personally my favorite, you've got the center part has a beautiful marbling to it, and it's tender. You've got the cap, which is just absolutely
it's the
delicious.
best, yeah.
And you got a little bit of fat in between, which is going to kind of melt, keep your steak nice and juicy. You know, the marbling inside the steak is going to melt into it as well. It's probably one of my favorite steaks that you got.
It's nice to hear you talk about the fat too, because you know I remember growing up. Oftentimes, you know, whether it was my mom or you know we're at somebody else's place, aunt and uncle, you know, you could see they start taking off the fat, right? Yeah. Removing the fat before they cook it. Why is it important to keep that fat on there, Ian?
Well, when you're cooking it, keeping that fat on there, it's going to allow it. First off, you want some of the exterior fat, you can trim a little bit of away, but you want to have some. It's going to melt into the steak.
Right.
So once it gets on the plate, it's going to create the juice. It's going to keep it nice and flavorful. But the fat and the interior marbling, like when people come into the store and they say, well, they want a steak, but they don't want to see any fat in it.
Right.
That's not the steak I'm going to want. You're going to want that intramuscular fat, that marbling, that, in French it's persillage, is what you're going to want, because that's where the juiciness is going to come from. The flavor is going to come from. It's great for you. You know, some of the fat, the ribs always going to have that, and those melt in. And you know, I always try to make sure that I have a little bit for every bite.
Yeah,
you know, that's the most flavorful part.
Absolutely, and even on the outside, right? Mm-hmm. If you cook it properly, it gets that little crispiness to it, and it just melts in your mouth.
You're making me
right?
hungry.
But the other thing, I'm glad you mentioned too, cast iron pan, because you know when we talk, oh, it's barbecue season, and probably a lot of people feel left out. Hey, I'm in a condo or an apartment building, I don't have access to a barbecue. You would suggest both of these you could do in a cast iron, work really well?
And it's the easiest thing to do. I mean, you just take your cast iron pan, turn your oven or your stove on hot,
okay,
crank it all the way up, throw some oil in it, let it sit for a good 5 minutes, really heat up. Then you just coat your steak with your Silver Fox Butcher steak spice, Montreal steak spice, whatever you're going to put on it, salt, pepper.
Yeah.
About 3-4 minutes aside, flip it, and then take it out, let it rest for about 5 minutes. And it's going to be perfect to cut.
And that's another key, too, that I think a lot of people think, oh, well, you know, I want to make sure, you know, it stays hot and, you know, I don't want to let it sit for that long. But that's really key because it does what exactly?
So when you cook a steak, the juices move all around.
Right.
You've got all the flavor and all the juices move throughout as you're flipping it and turning it. And once you take it off, you put it on a plate or your cutting board, you let it rest, it's going to let the juices redistribute evenly. Okay. So when you cut your steak, the juices are going to be in every part. You're not going to get that big purge like you would if you cut it right away.
Right.
So when you take a steak off a grill and you put it on your plate, start cutting it, you're going to see all the juices start coming out. You don't want that.
Yeah.
Once you let it sit and then slice it for after a few minutes, then everything is redistributed. It's going to be perfect.
I think most of us have been there. I remember the days when I would cut it right away, and all of a sudden your whole plate is just full of juice, right off the bat.
But then the other thing was that the days were, you know, when steak.
Hold on, we're gonna stop you there. We'll come back and continue this conversation in just a moment. Back with Ian right after this. Don't go anywhere. This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
Guy's just absolutely dynamic when it comes to putting the puck in.
This guy, something else.
Here comes the 67s. Wow.
And now the Rangers are away.
His acceleration's off the charts.
That's a player that all eyes in the NHL are going to be on tonight.
You are not going to sit there and tell me that this guy is not going to be a future NHLer. This kid is something special.
The OHL playoffs are coming soon to Rogers TV.
My name is Risa Solomon St. Louis, and I'm the chef and owner of Bacchanal Taste the Caribbean Lifestyle. I love to eat, I love to cook, and this is one of the reasons why I became a chef. I'm excited to share some of what inspires me when you see me at farmers markets, when we're catering, through our prepared meals, and even our sauces and spice blends that we're known for. Thank you for coming into the kitchen with Risa.
Unbelievable. You just never see that. Oh, what a shot.
The OHL on Rogers TV.
Back with Ian Slipikoff, owner of Du Michel Meat and Deli, and we were just having a discussion about, back in the day, Ian, when our parents were cooking or relatives, or even you went to a friend's place, when they made steak, it was it just killed the flavor, right?
You killed it twice. It already got killed when it got slaughtered, and then they killed it again when they cooked it. It's just overdone. Yeah. So, the days of that are pretty well gone. Now, medium rare is kind of the go-to. You can almost feel when you're cooking a steak if you use your tongs. I'm at the point now I've cooked so many steaks that I could just touch it and I know how it is. Yeah. But there's a way to know when your steak is cooked. If you
the finger rule.
The finger rule. Yeah. Depending on which finger you're touching, and you touch the palm or the inside of your hand, how tough that is how tough your steak is.
That's right. So if you sort of go index to thumb, that's rare, right? And then as you move up, it's sort of medium rare, and then medium, and then you got.
You're an expert.
Yeah, listen, it's because people like you, over the last 20 years, I told you, I was saying to Ian, when I first started doing this show 20 years ago, I was practically burning my meat, like steak, pork, you name it. And then I had a chef come on the show, and you're trying everything live on the air. I try this steak, and I'm like, is this how it's supposed to be?
It's
what have I been doing?
I know. I mean, we've killed it all our lives, and then you finally realize, and it's like, now I want more steak.
Yeah.
Try another one, figure out exactly what you like, because everything's just been overcooked all your life.
Yeah, agree. We used to do that to vegetables too. I remember those days as well. Let's talk chicken wings. You and I are huge fans of chicken wings. There's some amazing restaurants that serve wonderful chicken wings in the city, but you can make them yourself so easily as well, right?
It's simple. And then it's a great way of saving money as well. You can buy the chicken wings at the grocery store. Quite often you're going to get these whole wings. So it's the three parts. There's the tip, the flat, and the drumette all together. It's the least expensive kind.
Right.
But if you have a little bit of knowledge and a sharp knife, you can turn it into split wings like you get at a restaurant.
Okay, all right.
So it's just a matter of knowing where to make the cuts. So when you have your wing, like I said, there's the tip, you've got the flat and the drumette. Very simple. You just, right in between, you just find exactly where the joint is, and you just use your knife, cut right in through. You can all just go right in between the flat and the drumette.
Right.
Takes nothing.
That's interesting that you take off the little tip there, because I'm I'm actually a fan of that, because it gets nice and crispy. And even though the bone's in there, you can still still eat it, 100%. Right? I mean, but this is the way probably most people like it. I just happen to like that tip myself.
When you order St. Isabel and you're eating, and you always make sure you have that dip, because it's so crispy and salty, and it's the best.
So good. I agree.
When you're doing your wings, and it's very easy. And Derek, we've talked about different chicken recipes and what you like and how we cook them. But once you do your split wings, one of the best ways that I've learned to do wings, especially, is in the oven, because I don't have a deep fryer at home. I'm not one of the few people in this world without an air fryer now.
Yeah, I don't have one either yet. Everyone keeps telling us to get one.
And I see all the different recipes and air fryer for this, air fryer for that, but I haven't broken down for one yet. So I take my wings, whether they're whole or split, I coat them in a bit of olive oil, salt, pepper. Put them on a baking sheet, 425 in the oven, about 10 minutes aside, and you take them out. Once you take them out, let them sit for a minute.
Okay.
Put them in a nice big bowl with whichever hot sauce you like or barbecue sauce. Give them a toss, throw them on your plate.
And that's how the restaurants do it so well, right? We were talking about that. The thing people make a mistake at when you're doing it at home is whether it's oven or on the barbecue, they sauce it first, right?
what ends up happening is when you sauce it first, you caramelize that sauce. So it's going to be baking onto the wing in the oven, and it gets too hot.
Right.
The temperature cooking chicken is just too hot for that sauce, and you end up burning them.
You burn the sauce, and then it's also, you don't have any crispiness left, right, in the wing itself. You mentioned lamb is a big seller around this time of year. This is, I imagine, Canadian lamb as well that you're doing, right, local?
It's Ontario lamb. So I brought in today a Ontario lamb rack, and it's what's called French. So the bones are cleaned at the tip. It's a great thing. You can either roast it in the oven. You know, there's amazing pistachio crusted lamb rack recipes. You know, a little rosemary, a little bit of olive oil. They're great for roasting for sure.
Yeah.
But then there's another thing that you can do with them is, and I'll just take it out of the package here.
Okay.
Take me 2 seconds.
Yeah, it's always a challenge into lamb, that's for sure.
Gonna throw a couple of gloves on here.
Okay.
Change the gloves up.
And you're right. I mean, you know, the nice thing about, you know, the internet these days, too, is there's so many great recipes out there, and you have, they get graded now, too, right? So you know whether it's decent, a lot of people, whether they liked it or not.
And so this is beautiful Ontario lamb. And then what we're going to do is we'll just move some steaks out of the way here. And you ever gone to a restaurant and had like a lamb lollipop? So it's almost like it's from a lamb rack, and it's really just something quick that you can eat. You can just flash it on both sides on the grill or in a cast iron pot. So your rack is here, and the chine bone is always removed when it's Frenched. So you can take your knife and cut literally in between the bones.
And then you get a perfect,
and you get perfect, beautiful lamb chop. Lamb chop. And they're called lollipops. I mean, it looks like a lollipop from a stick.
I've been to events where they do this, right? Because they're looking for food that you can walk around with, right?
Exactly.
If you have a glass of wine or a beer or
you want to have
pop
something
or
easy,
something.
and it just season them, a little salt and pepper, throw them on the grill. Takes a couple minutes aside, and that's it. And it's super easy and great when you have guests. It looks nice.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So if you're doing this as a full rack, what do you suggest? Obviously, is it the same principle that you would sauce it later, or can you do something first?
Even as a full rack, what I would do is I would crust it. So you could mix up like pistachios, a bit of thyme, rosemary, olive oil, and kind of create a crust. And just you pack it on.
Okay.
And then put it on a baking sheet in the oven, and you roast it almost like a small roast.
Right. Yeah.
It doesn't take very long, and it's beautiful.
Oh, it's
Canadian lamb and Ontario lamb specifically is some of the best lamb in the world. So it's got a very subtle, delicate flavor to it, whereas lamb from New Zealand or Australian basically is very gamey.
Yeah.
And can be almost tough and chewy. This is incredible.
Go and get the best. Always try for quality, right?
You got it.
Absolutely. Ian, thank you so much. Happy Easter to you and your family. I know you're going to be enjoying. They are not open tomorrow. They are open on Saturday. 351 Donald Street is where you can find them. You can find them online as well. And check out the YouTube channel, Silver Fox Butcher. We'll be back with more right after this.
Welcome to the traditional, ancestral, unceded territory of the Stalo people. The Stalo are people of the river. I'm so thankful for the courage and resiliency of our ancestors who lived on this land since time immemorial. Each of us have gifts from the Creator, and our Creator has a plan and purpose to be fulfilled in our territory. As we embrace our traditional teachings, we can lead the next generation into the fullness of what our Creator designed. Our shared history reveals a broken relationship, but as all Canadians commit to hear truth, acknowledge injustice, we can learn to walk in our traditional way, Letsamot, with a good heart and a good mind. Then all of our lives will be enriched. Kwasai.
With Rogers TV, you can cheer on the home team from the comfort of your living room. We'll head to the rink, the field, the court, or the pitch, so you don't have to. Tune in and cheer on your local amateur athletes on Rogers TV.
Join us for the new season of Ottawa Storytellers, right here on Rogers TV.
Hey, listen, I thought I was a sports fan until I met my next guest. Just the name of his podcast, the Sports Lunatic Show, will tell you all you need to know about Howie Mooney. He is co-host of that show. He's also the author of Crazy Days and Wild Nights and the author of More Crazy Days and Wild Nights. Howie joins me in the studio. How are you?
It's great to be here, Derek. I know how booked you guys are, so it's great to thank you for having me.
We'll always make time for you, Howie. Listen, because when did you fall in love with sports? I mean, you must have been a fan your entire life, eh?
Well, we were kids. My brother and I, we were sports nuts.
Yeah.
My mother's father was season ticket holder for the Rough Riders in the North Side stands. When they built the South Side stands, my uncle was a season ticket holder. And then when we got to be a certain age, the Royal Bank had a program for kids who were a certain age, and we were of that age. And if you opened up an account with them, for $5 you can get season tickets in the end zone seats back then.
No way.
So we were season ticket holders at 11 and 12 in the end zone seats at Lansdowne Park. Yeah.
I love that story.
Yeah.
And you love stories. You love storytelling. You love talking about the history of sports. You and I, before the show, were talking about your latest podcast. You reached out to some of your fans on Facebook, and you asked them what, Howie?
Well, we have a Facebook page, the Sports Lunatics Show Facebook page, and one of the questions that my co-host Sean put out was, can you think of an NHL star that you think has been forgotten? And some of the answers and some of the responses that we got from people were pretty interesting.
Okay.
Not what I would have expected, but our first episode in that series just went up before I came here today.
Okay.
So it's up at, you listen to it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio, wherever you get your podcasts.
Who were some of those players?
Gilbert Perreault, Stan Mikita. There were some interesting ones though. Al Secord.
Al Secord.
He was a guy who worked for everything he got. He was a fighter for a lot of his career, but there were a couple of years where he scored 40 and 50 goals. And then he developed a sports hernia, which is that lower stomach pull.
Yeah.
And he was never the same player ever again after that. But Al Secord was an interesting guy because after his career was over, he became a pilot and flew flights for American Airlines
Really?
He retired, I think, last year or the year before.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your two books, Crazy Days and Wild Nights. I think it kind of speaks for itself, but you choose a few stories, like compelling stories in sports history for each of these books,
yeah,
right?
you said it. I'm a sports guy. I'm a sports history guy. I also love stories that are interesting, magnetic, compelling. The stories that I have in both of these books they're the kinds of stories where the principles in the stories, something unforeseen happens, something that nobody planned for happens, and then everybody's forced to deal with the consequences of random chance. It happens to all of us in life at different times. Something happens with our car, something happens. Well, with these guys, it's something that could affect their life, their career. There's one story in the book that you're holding up right now. I'm sure you remember, or you've heard of the boxing match in Las Vegas in 1982 between Boom Boom Mancini and Duk Koo Kim.
Yes.
I talk about that fight. I talk about the trajectory that both guys were on, how they basically, Duk Koo Kim, just what a story. He fought himself out of poverty in Korea. He was living under bridges. He was drinking water out of puddles just to get.
Really?
Yes, and then he decided to make something out of his life, and he fought his way out of Korea, out of Asia, to the World Championship fight against Boom Boom Mancini in 1982. It was in, I can't remember which casino parking lot it was in, but it was it was in Vegas. It was on CBS Sports Saturday. the worst possible thing happened for the two of them. As I said, their trajectories were going like this.
Yeah.
One guy died. The other one never got over it.
Right.
He was never the same fighter after that.
Yeah.
But for Duk-Koo Kim, they flew his mother over from Korea. She said, take him off life support. They took him off life support. Within a couple of months, she committed suicide.
Wow, I didn't know that part of the story.
The referee in the fight blamed himself for allowing it to go on too long. He committed suicide.
Really?
Yes. And I go on to talk about, in that story, I talk about pre-fight, the fight, and then the aftermath as well. And it's one of the hardest things. I feel emotional just talking about it. But the stories in the second book are a little longer than the ones in the first book. In the first book, there are 19 stories. In the second book, there are 11.
And I think what's fascinating about a lot of the stories, and I think you describe it this way, you know, some of these careers and lives are changed in, you know, a minute, an hour, 3 hours, right? And because that's the way sports works. I mean, in this case that you're talking about, it happens in a flash.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe it's a baseball game that goes on for 3 hours, and then, you know, the home run gets hit, and it changes something in someone's life.
In the second book, there's a story about a CFL game in 1994 where Matt Dunnigan throws for 700 yards, something that never gets done.
Crazy.
But the problem is nobody saw it because it wasn't televised.
Right.
You know, and back in those days, the CFL had a very precarious television schedule. It was operated by something called the Canadian Football Network. And in Ottawa, I think the Canadian Football Network station used to be CHRO, which is now, I think, CTV2. But, you know, during COVID, they got all the guys, or as many of the guys as they could together from that team, that Winnipeg Blue Bombers team. And they did a little documentary about the game and about their themselves and their.
I'd love to watch that. Yeah, because can you imagine missing something that will probably that's not going to be beat.
The only video that existed of it was the game film that somebody was shooting. There was no television, no televised.
Right. Probably the game film for the players to, you know, for the coaches to sit down with the players, right, and go over the game.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I had no idea, because I know of the record, but I had no idea the story behind it.
Yeah.
That's what makes these two books so fascinating, everybody at home, is that there are these stories you probably have heard of, but you don't know all the backstory and everything that's happened. Howie, where can people pick up a copy of each of these?
Best place to get a copy of either book would be on Amazon. I believe the first book is on at a really good price right now, so you know, if you don't feel like spending the $25 for the second one, you can get the second one at a reduced price.
And the Lunatics.
Sports Lunatics, you can listen to our podcasts. We're on YouTube as well, or thesportslunatics.com. That's where our website is.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Howie.
Thank you, Derek.
Really appreciate it. Anytime. You can stop by anytime. We'll be back with more right after this.
Like most of Canada's film and media industries, Todd Studio is mostly straight and white. But by pledging to check their privilege, Todd Studio can now help fund programs to finally create a more diverse talent pool. And Todd, you can stop hiding behind this plan. What?
Actually, I'm in the vents.
Stop hiding from our industry's lack of diversity and pledge to help POV fix it. Go to checkyourprivilege.ca.
Public transit, garbage pickup, parks and recreation programs, snow removal on your street. How can you stay informed about these and other important local services? Tune to City Council coverage on Rogers TV. See your community leaders at work on Rogers TV City Council coverage.
Hello, I'm Liz Dowdswell, Lieutenant Governor of Ontario. In 2008, carbon monoxide, a deadly invisible gas, killed an entire family in our province. That tragedy led to a new law requiring homes with potential CO sources to have alarms. John Gignac's family members passed away that day, and he shares his story to save others.
Please make sure you have working CO alarms in your home. Protect your family today.
Watch Podium, exclusively on Rogers TV.
You're watching an interesting local show on Rogers TV and you want to know more. That's when you head to rogerstv.com. Our website provides more information about our programs, our hosts, our schedule, and about how you too can get involved with Rogers TV. Visit us online at rogerstv.com.
Welcome back to the show. It's an organization I was introduced to many, many years ago, and they do such incredible work here in our community, working with those with developmental disabilities, those that are on the spectrum, and really the name of it tells you all that they help with, and that is Live, Work, and Play. And I'm joined by co-leader and director of operations, Julie Kingstone. Julie, welcome back.
Oh,
Great
thanks,
to have
Derek.
you here. Keenan was here almost a year ago now, and we're going to get to sort of what's happened over that year, but tell everybody at home a little bit about Live, Work, Play and your mission.
Sure. Yeah, Live, Work, Play. Our mission is to help the community welcome people with intellectual disabilities, autistic persons, and people with dual diagnosis to live, work, and play as valued contributors in the Ottawa community. And so that kind of looks different for everybody. It's very individualized, so it can be from helping people live successfully in a home of their own to helping connect people to a job and to employers in our community, as well as people interested in just having fun in our community. So joining their local gym or finding a club or a sports team that they're really interested in. So it's all of those things that we help people with every day.
And that word welcoming is incredibly important. How have you've been around for a long time now. I know there are challenges still, but have you seen a lot of growth in that welcoming of those that are living with different abilities, as you just described?
Oh, I think over the 30 years, definitely seen a huge change. From landlords to employers to we have 130 volunteers every year to just local venues like a gym or a mainstream club or class. And I think the one thing that we've learned is that the things that we have in common are really we have to focus on those things. And all of us have a not belonging story.
Right.
And so really, if we can connect over knowing and recognizing that all of us have at one point in our lives have not belonged, and this really brings people together, and it's not that complicated, right? We're all human and we all have common interests and like to do things, so we've seen huge changes in our community. It's still lots of room to grow and improve, but huge.
I mentioned, it's been a year and a lot has changed since then, the biggest change being that you're in a new place and you were kind of forced to find a new place,
true.
Right?
Yeah, we were located in a building that had flooded in 2017, and then everything got back to normal. And then just this past August, people might remember there was some hail and some flash flooding in Ottawa.
We're seeing the photo here just to give you a heads up.
That's it.
That was the building you were in.
So we were on the 4th floor, so our office actually wasn't impacted, but the building was. So there was the landlord had to make some pretty hard choices and decided that they weren't too sure if they could bring the building back up to standard. So everybody in the building was given notice back in the fall, and thankfully we had been using the meeting room and training rooms over at Bayview Yards the latter half of the pandemic for our staff meetings, and approached them to see if they had a little office that we would rent, and they were like, of course, this would be a great addition to our community. So as of October, we've been there, and it's been a great, really positive evolution of how we're doing our work.
Yeah, and I didn't really have a chance to celebrate because it was so quick, right, to move in, and you couldn't really invite everyone in to say, hey, this is a great new space, we're so proud to be here, and you've got an open house coming up Tuesday of next week, right?
Yeah, April 2nd, 1 o'clock. If you're interested, you can visit our website and RSVP, but we'll have some tours and some light refreshments and just an opportunity to connect and check out the new space.
Something else coming up is your Make a Buzz auction, and that's been going on for many, many years. May 10th, I believe it is. May 10th.
Yeah.
Tell everybody at home a little bit about that. And then you have changed the way it works over the past few years,
I mean,
right?
yes, we used to have two kind of separate events, one more focused on raising funds and the other one really focused on celebrating our partnerships, our collaborations, and the lives of people we support and our volunteers. And we sort of merged those events together a few years ago, which is now known as Make a Buzz. So it's a dinner where we invite people we support, their family members and support networks, volunteers and partners, and really celebrate the last year. So we look at celebrating people's lives with Rob Moore Good Life Award, as well as inclusive employer awards for the private sector and government employers, as well as community connections and ambassador awards and volunteer awards.
Right.
So and we also have a silent auction component where, just for fun, we have some items that people can bid on throughout the night. And so it raises a bit of money, but also really it's about connecting with each other and celebrating the successes.
Yeah, and it's a lot of fun. I remember it used to be a live auction, right?
Yes, I remember.
Sandy Sharkey and I
falling through the stage.
And falling through the stage, right? And I think we auctioned off something like 35 items or something like that.
Yes.
And then probably one of the reasons why you switched over, right, to it being more of a silent auction, because it was a long night, I guess.
Yes.
Is that some of the? Am I right in that? Or?
I mean, the pandemic sort of hit, and so we did take that. We continued to do the event online, and so we changed it over to a silent auction because of that. And then we realized that yes, the live auction, a lot of people enjoyed the entertainment of the live auction for sure. And so it's not like we'll never do that again, but definitely the silent auction was just something that's easy to, people can start bidding ahead of time before the event, and people seem to enjoy that as well. So.
A lot of people that are going to be there are partnerships that you've created for employment. Let's talk a little bit about employment opportunities and how that has been, because the pandemic, a great effect on a lot of those employment opportunities, right, Julie?
Yeah. So before the pandemic, we were really saw a lot of momentum with hiring within the federal government, which was new for us, great opportunity, but also with the private sector. And we actually had started bringing together champions, employers who had hired through Live Work Play, and they got them together to start using their personal and professional networks to go talk to vendors they use in their business or through their local business networks to share their success story and encourage other employers to consider hiring a person with a disability. But not just because it's a nice thing to do, but because it is actually helps your business. And so we had a great volunteer group of champions, and we were getting about 70 to 80% of our job leads through their personal professional networks. And then the pandemic hit, and so there was two things that happened, right? Our community closed, and so there was less opportunities for employment.
Right.
And people lost their jobs because retail and restaurants and all that kind of stuff.
And less support, right? Because of the pandemic. And Make a Buzz available to the public if they want to get tickets?
Yes, on our website, and we'll be celebrating employers and community partners.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Julie. LiveWorkPlay.ca, by the way, to contribute in any way. We'll be back with more right after this.
This is a brain in urgent need of mental health care. But because 3 out of every 4 Indigenous people experience racism in healthcare, she may not get the help she needs. Become an ally. Rise above racism in healthcare.
My name is Matthew Rutledge. I'm a 60 Scoop survivor, born in Red Lake. Was adopted from there to Toronto at the age of 4. A lot of our brothers and sisters, family members got separated from each other. That was the government's goal, to break that connection from brothers and sisters. Basically taking the Indian out of the child. Right now, they're still trying to find themselves. Originally, my birth name is Harvey Halverson. In my high school days, teens, I was trying to fit into society. I knew I was First Nations, but I didn't know who I was inside. I think later in life, I started that journey. I am proud, Anishinaabe man, who I am now. I love life, who I am.
Learn all about the creation of the National Capital Region on The History of Ottawa, according to Phil Jenkins, on Rogers TV.
Hi, I'm Sam LaPrade. I hope you join us for an hour to give right here on Rogers TV. We're going to talk about everything that is going to inspire you about this beautiful city.
Welcome back to the show. Well, March is Fraud Prevention Month, and TD Bank Group has commissioned yet another survey to find out what Canadians are thinking about when it comes to fraud and scams. And we're going to, in particular, talk about what Ontarians are thinking about when it comes to that survey and share some of those results with you here today. I'm joined by Jared Jarman. He's the District Vice President of Ottawa Central TD Bank Group. Welcome, Jared. Great to have you here.
Thanks for having me, Derek.
Probably something important for somebody in your position and being from TD Bank Group, because a lot of these scams and a lot of this fraud comes from people that are pretending to be a bank to a certain extent, right? Let's talk about this survey and why you felt it was important to do at TD Bank Group.
Yeah, absolutely. So every year, Fraud Awareness Month is March, and so we look to say, how can we help Canadians get more confident, build confidence, learn more about what's happening. Sometimes it shapes what we do, like creating the TD fraud alerts where we target people with, or we send messages for transactions that are suspicious.
Right.
And so through the survey, we actually found from an Ontario perspective that 6 in 10 Ontarians feel vulnerable to being targeted for fraud. And so fraud's on the rise. I think no surprise there. What was a bit surprising is as a result of that, we found out that less than half of those Ontarians have actually taken steps to either educate themselves or protect themselves.
Interesting.
But Derek, as I was going through the results, what I thought fascinating was we often think about, older Ontarians or Canadians being targeted. I'd worry about, my grandparents, my parents, right? And it was actually young adults, 18 to 34, that felt the most vulnerable. So 2 in 3 young adults actually feel vulnerable to being targeted for fraud.
I wonder why that is. Are there many more incidences that perhaps we're not aware of that are happening to that demographic?
I think as fraud becomes a bit more sophisticated, I think it's also changed channels.
Okay.
And so in that same young adult segment, you're seeing 4 in 10 were actually targeted for fraud already on social media.
Okay.
And so I think the shocking thing that we found out is that in general, 3 in 10 Canadians would be embarrassed to talk about having, been targeted or lost money to fraud.
Yeah.
In that young adult segment, it actually goes up to 4 in 10. And I think it's that, it's the dynamic of younger people technically being more savvy, and then that embarrassment of potentially having been targeted and lost something in the process.
Yeah, and I think we can all understand that. We've all heard the stories, in the media, or maybe you've heard it from, personal friends and family members that have been targeted, and they are embarrassed. And because you think to yourself, because it's always easy after the fact, right? Jared is, oh my goodness, I should have thought about that. So
Absolutely.
How are they going about targeting? It doesn't matter what demographic. How are they going about targeting people these days?
So the item that we're seeing more of, and interesting enough, Derek, I got targeted this week on Monday, are job scams. And so I got offered lots of money to work from home, right?
Yeah,
so I think
I've gotten those, yeah.
Too good to be true. And oddly enough, I think I've gotten one every week over the last 4 weeks in that space. So that's on the rise. I would say also investment scams have been coming up. So where, you get a guaranteed rate of return, which advertising-wise, there's a lot of protection around that. So if something sounds too good to be true or the rate of return is really high, that's something to pause and take a step back on.
Right.
And the other item, unfortunately, that happens is donation scams are also coming up. And so, where they're looking for donations. And so you might see it's a story that sounds really horrible that might not be true, or somebody might actually take a true story, but it's not the recipient or the person that's actually been impacted.
Right.
So those are the items we see come up. And interestingly enough, that young adults are also worried about all 3 of those. I'd say more than the general population.
Let's look at one in particular. I was just thinking email. When something comes in, is there something I should be looking at specifically? The email address.
Absolutely.
Because obviously never click on a link. Number one.
Yes.
Ever. But what should you be looking for in that case?
I'd say the sender. Do you recognize the person it's coming from? Does the address seem reasonable? You know, so if it's coming from TD, it would have a TD indicator on it.
Right.
And then if you look at the body of the email, 2 items I'd say that pop up. The link item for sure, but I'd say 2 additional ones are spelling mistakes,
yes,
or grammatical errors that often come up, and then urgency. Anything that pops up that says you need it now, or you know, pay your taxes for the windfall that's coming, or an item like that. So usually a combination of those should put off alarm bells in one's head to say, this doesn't sound right.
Gotcha. You have a great app that can help people. Let's talk a little bit about that and how that can help Canadians.
Yeah, for sure. I'd say, you know, in the past, what might have happened is if you lost your card or you felt like it was compromised, you'd have to cancel your card and then, you know, have it reissued. And so on the TD app, you can actually go in if you've misplaced your card, and you can actually pause or lock your card for a period of time.
Okay.
So that might give you the time to, you know, to either send a message to our social media team, call to the contact center that's open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, or if you want to go in person to visit one of the more than 40 TD branches we have in the Ottawa area. And then if you find out it's actually not something, that you can actually unblock your card.
Okay. That's right, and that in itself is incredibly helpful.
Absolutely.
Because you know the timing of these things, right? People don't carry cash anymore. They're using that in general. As far as, you know, we really were specific to Ontario. Across Canada, was it the same kind of numbers that you saw? Did it differ at all?
I'd say it was similar across the board.
Okay.
Like, not really that different between Canada and Ontario. It was that young adult piece that really popped out as being surprising, and I'd say that embarrassed component, that 4 in 10 are too embarrassed, and so that kind of just sets off some warning signs that, you know, we need to do more in terms of education, awareness, look at the tools that we might to support, but also hopefully to have people say, hey, we're there to support you.
Right.
Right.
And as a banking and financial institution, you're not going to reach out in a lot of the manners that, you know, that we're discussing today. I guess that's another thing to you know, to consider, right?
Yeah, so we do have sort of like the TD fraud alert that I had mentioned.
Yeah.
That's one where if your mobile number is up to date, you're a Canadian resident, we will actually send a message, but we would ask you to contact us, get in touch with us, right? We won't ask you to provide personal details, provide banking details. That's that notion of urgency and information that should set off alarm bells to say, wait a minute.
Right. Yeah, and you can always speak to somebody like yourself or at your branch and walk in. Jared, really appreciate the time today.
My pleasure.
Thank
Thanks
you
for
so
having
much.
me, Derek.
Again, the month of March is Fraud Prevention Month, so just make sure if it sounds, as Jared said, too good to be true, guess what? It's too good to be true. We'll be back with more right after this. Don't go anywhere.
This guy's just absolutely dynamic when it comes to putting the puck in.
This guy, something else.
Here comes the 67s. Wow. And now the Rangers are away.
His acceleration's off the charts. That's a player that all eyes in the NHL are going to be on tonight.
You are not going to sit there and tell me that this guy is not going to be a future NHLer. This kid is something special.
The OHL playoffs are coming soon to Rogers TV.
On Rogers TV.
These days at your local Legion, we're marching to the beat of a different drum. On a mission to support veterans, to have fun, and to welcome everyone to our ranks. You don't have to be a veteran to join the Legion. And as a member, you'll join thousands of others serving our veterans, our communities, and our country. Oh yeah, and our Member Perks program will save you thousands on shopping, dining, products, and services across the country. Join us at legion.ca.
With Rogers TV, you can cheer on the home team from the comfort of your living room. We'll head to the rink, the field, the court, or the pitch, so you don't have to. Tune in and cheer on your local amateur athletes on Rogers TV.
Welcome back to the show. One of my favorite parts of doing this show is our green room experience, because all the guests get to gather and they get to find out about each other and introduce each other. And it was purely by coincidence that I had both Julie and my next guest on the show, because they have a lot in common, and that is helping people with different abilities here in the city of Ottawa. I'm joined by Emma Brown. She's the founder of Wimble. Welcome, Emma. Great to have you back.
Thank you.
Yeah, let's talk about Wimble. And what was the inspiration behind it for you, Emma?
Yeah, so I have a younger brother with a physical disability, and he has personal care needs where he requires assistance for accomplishing activities of daily living. It's very common for people with disabilities to need assistance going to the bathroom, taking a shower, just doing very normal human activities day to day. And in his case, his routine caregiver sometimes can't make it last minute, or he has needs that come up unexpectedly outside of his routine schedule. And I've been the backup person for him for many years. So I wanted to build something where everyone could have access to a backup support system, regardless of whether or not they had a sister that lived down the street and accepted bribes.
So what is Wimble then? You've created this great way to connect people, right, and build a roster, if you will. Tell us about Wimble and how it works.
Exactly. I thought it would be as easy as just copying the Uber app and saying, instead of needing a ride from point A to point B, I need assistance going to the bathroom at this location at this time. But it's a little bit more complicated than that, but that's the essential platform, is the ability for people who require personal care assistance to fill an urgent or short-term gap in their routine support system, to be able to say, hey, here's what I need, when I need it, where I need it, whether it's at school or at work or at a music festival or out at the mall with their friends or at a movie theater, and just give them that freedom to say, I need someone to meet me here to do these tasks at this time, and connect them with an available caregiver who's got time in their schedule and has the skills required.
So you've built a roster. How did you go about doing that, Emma?
Lots of trial and error.
I can imagine. Yeah.
So I think when we spoke last year, I was still in the error component.
Right.
So I ended up finding 2 great caregivers to bring on full time and sort of seed the supply side of the marketplace. And then they enabled us to build up enough demand to then justify bringing on more and more caregivers. So all of our caregivers are independent contractors. They most of them have full-time jobs in long-term care or with other clients, and they just happen to have a few hours here and there where they'd like to pick up extra shifts. So they all have gone through a really thorough vetting process. They have a recent vulnerable sector check. They have liability insurance, first aid, CPR, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
And then they get access to the shifts that we post as they come in.
And you've created some great partnerships as well. Tell me about those partnerships and the idea behind that.
Yeah, again, I think when we spoke last year, I was like, we're talking to a festival that rhymes with Schmooze Fest, but we hadn't actually finalized any details yet.
Well played, yeah, I like that.
But yeah, we had a great summer last year with both Blues Fest and City Folk, sort of testing out our events partnership model. So our service enables event organizers to offer on-site personal care attendant services. So if anyone with a disability or who has personal care needs, a senior who might need assistance, is attending the event and doesn't have someone to bring with them, or they've planned someone to bring with them and they bail last minute, there's someone on site to help people get their needs met, to enjoy their beer, to get food from the food truck, to take a quick pee break between acts, like just enjoy their experience and not be stressed about how they're going to get their needs met.
And I imagine for this year that you're partnered, like that's a go now with Ottawa Blues Fest and City Folk. You also have a partnership with the Shaw Centre, is that right?
Yes, they've been amazing to work with. So we've set up a partnership with them where when event organizers come in and use their space, they are helping us promote Wimble to those event organizers. So as conferences book and I don't know, they host hundreds of events per year, so they'll all get Wimble. They'll get Wimble in front of all of those event organizers for us and help get the word out.
So you're a year in. Tell me what's the feedback been like so far?
Well, I have a few more gray hairs, but
I imagine.
I think the feedback has overall been really positive, which is always helpful to keep going when things are difficult and there's lots of challenges. For the most part, people have been really positive that we are filling a desperately needed gap in the system. There are so many avenues to get routine supports. Even those aren't perfect, but there's just no other option for when someone needs something and they don't have friends or family nearby, or their friends and family are at work, or they're asleep because it's later in the evening, or so people are really having their lives dictated by those routine support systems instead of being able to live their lives and fill the gaps as needed.
What's your biggest challenge? Building the roster, or getting more partnerships? Like, how do you see it? Like, sort of, what's your goal, I guess, moving into year 2?
That's a very good question. The biggest challenge, I think, and I don't know that it's ever going to go away, is as a two-sided marketplace, you're constantly balancing supply and demand.
Right.
And I've read books on how Uber and Airbnb and Lyft do it, and that's just never going to go away. That's the nature of the business, where every week you look like, do we have more demand than we can fill supply-wise, or do we have idle hands that aren't getting enough hours? And then you push one side to try to balance things out. So that's just going to be a constant part of the business. Getting the word out there about our event services is definitely something I'm hoping to work more on this year, because when we do talk to events and we explain what we're doing and we give them examples of where we fill gaps for other event organizers, 9 times out of 10 they say, oh, thank God, this happened to us at the last event and we didn't know what to do, we didn't respond adequately, or we felt really bad that we couldn't support. So people see the need once we get in front of them and explain what we're doing, and it's usually a pretty quick conversation, but it's getting in those doors and having those conversations.
Well, hopefully this helps raise some awareness. I really appreciate you joining us. Thank you so much, Emma. www.wimble.ca, Wimble with an H.ca. We'll be back with more right after this.
Join us for the new season of Ottawa Storytellers, right here on Rogers TV.
Public transit, garbage pickup, parks and recreation programs, snow removal on your street. How can you stay informed about these and other important local services? Tune to City Council coverage on Rogers TV. See your community leaders at work on Rogers TV City Council coverage.
Watch Podium exclusively on Rogers TV.
Welcome back to the show. Just want to remind you, Live, Work, Play, their Make a Buzz auction coming up. Again, you can get tickets. That is open to the public. It is so much fun. There's a dinner involved as well. Raises funds, as you just heard from Julie a little bit earlier, for a great cause. So liveworkplay.ca to find out more information. Or if you'd just like to make a donation, perhaps you can't make it out, they'd certainly appreciate it. Hey, Ottawa 67's playoff hockey coming up this weekend. Game 1 is tomorrow. The 67s are, they've got their hands full. But of course, Game 1 is on the road, so you can watch all of it right here on Rogers TV. So that is tomorrow at 7 p.m. Game 2 again on the road. That is on Sunday, March 31st at 7 p.m. And then we are back here at TD Place for Game 3. That is going to be on Tuesday, April 2nd at 7 p.m. Of course, you can find the full schedule at our Ottawa67s.com. You can visit RogersTV.com as well. But don't forget, regardless of if they're playing an away game or if they're playing at home, we will be carrying all the playoff games here on Rogers TV. Listen, have a great Easter weekend. If you're celebrating, I hope you're celebrating with friends and family, and we'll see you back here live on Monday. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.
Connect with us by visiting our website or email us at comments@rogerstv.com.
Welcome to Secondary Dwelling from Hell. We have the plumber who's here. He's doing some work. He's putting back the toilet. We haven't had a toilet here for a while, so it's gonna be nice to have a toilet. And then the electrician is coming. So I'm really excited to get this going. We're gonna move that hot tub out of the way because that needs to go so that we can do the interlock work for the staircase that's going down. It's crazy dangerous not to have a GFI, eh? Yeah, today's gonna be really fun. I'm excited.
Hey everybody, my name is Karen. I'm here with my best friends Shane and Monique. Join us on Rogers TV for Fitness Faction. Every week we're going